Everybody, good morning. Good morning. Hello. We have an exclusive here today at Kerfuffle, mainly because I'm joined by Mr. Mins. No, it's not because of Mr. Mins, lovely as he is. It is because we have the two founders of an amazing tech company. Well, two tech companies. How many tech companies is at the moment, Tom, Heather?
You just call it Street Group, that's fine.
Street Group. Okay, I'm on message. I've read the notes. I know how we should be presenting you. This isn't Chris Watkin. We don't do detail here. That's not what we're about. We're all about the news, though. And, we've got too much news, haven't we? First of all, let's deal with the big news. You are the reigning now supplier of the year at EA Masters in collaboration with a certain pink website called Kerfuffle as well, where we help them look at this. Amazingly well done, guys. That you've been winning awards left, right, and centre, haven't you? But that one, you know, as they would say, is the big one. How did that feel?
Amazing. A bit of a shock, I would say.
If you'd paused any longer there, that was going to get really awkward.
No.
They did a really good job of seeming really surprised on stage at the EA Masters, but it was genuine shock, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I think when you get to the end, you actually, I mean, I don't know if I'd say this, I was sat there like quietly fuming that we'd not won anything. So you go from like down here thinking, oh my God, I can't believe we missed out, to, and then it's the last name that's announced, and I just went mad, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, got a bit emotional as well.
Can I just talk? You know, you were magnanimous, you were very good and everything else. And I think everyone thinks you're obviously, you know, on what an honourable business, and Heather, really straight up businesswoman and everything else. You had spent the previous 3 months trying to find out if you could find out for me whether you'd won or not.
Obviously.
So you've been blackmailing me, feeding me full of amaretto and everything else. But the leaky whale was not for leaking. So it was.
No, I've tried everything.
It was actually it was genuinely nice to see you surprised, though, as well. And here's the thing, really. It shouldn't be much of a surprise, should it? I mean, Tom, coming in it from you're the man who, I was going to say, sits in the shadows. That makes you sound like a kind of Bond villain or something.
Very sinister.
But then Bond villain at Spectre is probably where we should be going with this. How good is it to see, obviously, you've obviously had a fantastic business with Spectre and everything else. You're layering on top, doing what most people would agree is the hardest thing in prop tech, creating a CRM package as well. How good is it for you and the team to finally get the plaudits as well and everything else to, well, winning everything in sight, really?
Obviously good. I think EA Masters in particular, because it's voted for by agents. I know in the past we've had less success at panel-based awards.
You're having to go at the judges, aren't you, there, Tom?
What's that?
You're having to go at the judges, aren't you? These idiot judges that didn't see your magnificence.
Yeah, but I find the panel-based awards tend to award the names that have been around a bit longer. So as an upstart, as somebody trying to disrupt an industry, it's very difficult to get recognition on that side of things. So I think, for us, agent feedback super important. So to win an award based off that is,
and just to sort of give us an idea of the journey, because you guys have been doing this a long time. You're not sort of newcomers to the scene, but you obviously never, unless you did, tell us about it, but you never dreamed at the beginning of your journey with, say, something like Spectre that you were going to be a fully fledged CRM one day, or did you?
No, not from the start, no. You know, originally Spectre was the brainchild of Tom. I'll give him the credit because he's on the call. Wouldn't otherwise, but to solve, like a niche problem. But the longer that you spend in this industry, the more ideas that you get and the more problems you see need to be solved. And was it 4 years ago now? 5?
Yeah. 5.
5 years ago, we decided to tackle the CRM space.
Tom walks into the boardroom. I've got a good idea.
Yeah.
It was born more out of frustration. At the time, we were trying to integrate with the existing CRMs, and we were being flat out told absolutely not. And then at the same time, I'd been in agency only 2 years before that. Yeah. And I think I was using On-Call Live and the original CFP Winman. So I was using some, not to disparage those particular piece of tech, but I think everyone would agree they're legacy. I was using some, very legacy kit. So yeah, I think it was always at the back of our mind of like, really to help agents, we need to go at the central piece of software, the CRM.
And one of the things I've remarked that seems to me describing you guys as, and it's interesting, you called yourself disruptors again there, which might seem funny to people thinking about you are an established name now. You have been around, you've got thousands of clients on the Spectre side of things, but that's still part of your DNA, is it, Tom? You see yourself as disruptors, and that's what you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. In interviews, I always describe us as a startup. Bear in mind the company's nearly 8 years old and was 115 people. But I think we deliberately try and keep a startup disruptor culture. So yeah, it's something that we always kind of
be big but think small mentality that keeps you on edge, as it were, in a good way. Not like I'm on edge.
Yeah, and moving fast as well.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's definitely where the comparison with me falls. So born out of frustration, as so many people have done with the things, led to you going down this road, and so it leads us to go on. So we're not going to drift away from the awards, because I know that obviously, if I know anything about people, they like to talk about them for a while longer. But you've got a really big week ahead of you, haven't you, as well? So is it Wednesday, you've got the launch webinar? I say like I don't know. I'm obviously registered under my fake pseudonym to...
Can I just say that the adverts leading up to this launch were just very, very good.
Yeah,
They're quite, it doesn't give anything away, but just enough and consistent enough to get everybody going. So I think there is genuine excitement, certainly amongst your existing clients as well, who have been using the CRM, but they need additional, or they want additional functionality adding, which I think, fingers crossed, everybody's hoping is coming on Wednesday, right?
Yes. What are we seeing? What are you going to be covering? Obviously, this one is the headline is it's the coming of lettings, really, isn't it, into street?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think, David hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of existing agents, but also agents that have seen street and want to come on board but haven't come on board yet. It's largely down to waiting for lettings and property management to be there. So we've been working really hard now for over 2 years on the lettings side of things, and that's what we're going to be launching on Wednesday. But we're going to start with announcing 8 new innovations that are going to go into the existing platform. And then we're going to go into the letting side of things, which I think a lot of agents have been waiting for. So fingers crossed it'll be a good event.
You say must have been waiting for. I mean, when we do our CRM reviews here for agents who are, trying to find out, and there's always, it's ridiculous on Facebook. Somebody will always say, what's the best CRM out there? It's like asking what's the best car. It all depends on what you're actually looking for and what your needs are. But without doubt, one of the core USPs or factors when people are looking is, well, are you looking for a combined package with sales and lettings together, isn't there? From just off the top of my head, and it's always simple stats with me, but it's about 50% of the people we talk to are looking for that. So your sales team must be exceedingly excited at the thought that they haven't got to say not yet, we'll put you on the waiting list and everything else. The fact you're smiling like that tells me it probably wasn't quite as relaxed.
I'm only smiling like this because I'm looking at a man that sold me Jet and promised me that accounts was coming. It was coming. It never arrived.
You're cutting up there, actually, David. Let me just. I never did any sales. So I mean that must be just on the face of it. Although you're probably both a little bit sort of all, because it's not like demand's been your struggle, has it? Really, like with many CRMs, it's the ability to scale and deliver the software that is often one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, that's right. You're right there. About 50% will say super keen to come on board when you have, which, from a commercial perspective has been brilliant on one hand that you've got the demand, but also frustrating that you can't actually fulfill it. So hopefully, on Wednesday, the floodgates will open and we can actually start doing something about it. Because I think you're right. I'd probably say 60% of agents want everything all in one package, which I actually sympathise with. And I understand.
It's hard enough bringing the departments together anyway, isn't it? Without having artificial data silos or whatever you want to call Chinese walls between the departments. Just there's no sense in that, is there?
Yeah, and you want your 360-degree view of a client as well, and you want to surface opportunities across the business where possible. And now, obviously, with Street launching the property management side, they'll be able to do that. So it's a massive step forward. Very excited.
So is that benefit for there's a benefit for the clients as well, isn't there? In as much as there's no duplication on their side of things in terms of their interaction with the agent, they don't have two separate logins. They're not going to have to. It's not as if you're dealing with two completely separated departments that just happen to sit under one roof. They can now sort of treat the client from start to finish, whether they're a landlord or a vendor, buyer, seller. It all makes the same difference now, doesn't it?
Exactly. Single source of truth. It opens doors in terms of finding opportunities, but also massively improves the client experience.
And Tom, one of the things describing you guys, I think I went on record saying probably one of the most exciting prop tech releases in a decade when it first came to call. And one of the things that really that jumped out for me is that in the prop tech world, we quite often understandably see the clients as the estate agents and just the estate agents. So we're focused on just them getting what they need out of it, and obviously talking to them to get the testimonials. But actually, you guys seem to go a stage beyond that, and where the best prop tech comes to, you were thinking about what the consumer experience was like. So what would the agent's own clients be getting back from it? So there's always been that strong B2C element in all of and does that tech come from where have you taken that from the Street side of things? The Spectre side of things? Where does that kind of ethos come from? Is it just being frustrated being sat on the other side as well?
I think our opinion is that consumer experience will always win in the end. So, it's a benefit to our clients long term to give them software that will give a great customer experience to their clients. But estate agency is one of those weird industries where a lot of the time when you have this kind of dual tiered, you've got your B2B element, and then you've also developing for their clients. A lot of the time that will be at conflict. So you've got to, as a tech company, you've got to make a decision. Right, okay, there's a slight conflict here. Who do we prioritize? Do we prioritize our client or do we prioritize our client's client? Yeah. But in estate agency, the vast majority of instances, it's just a huge win-win on both sides. And I think it's because tech in estate agency is so far behind. If you take an example, like if you allow people to leave feedback themselves online, either by text message, WhatsApp, whatever, the clients love it, but it also saves a huge amount of time for agents. It's very rare that you actually have to prioritize one over the other. If you give clients the tools to self-serve in the right areas, they love it, and it saves the agent a load of time.
This is it's almost a mind step change, isn't it? In terms of that, people used to think that self-service was the company washing their hands of delivering, well, actually, we're going to let the client do this and set it up or self-serve it. But it is ultimately, as long as you crack that, and you guys never struggle with the UI side of things, because I know you put a lot of time in, but if you can deliver that back to the client, self-serve is always the main is the main thing, isn't it? Because you've got the immediacy and you're not waiting around for things to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and the trick is knowing the industry as well. Like there's certain parts where you could allow a vendor, say, to self-serve. You could, the technology is relatively simple to allow them to make price reductions or accept an offer online. But, Street doesn't do that. That's where agents add a huge amount of value. So it's knowing the tech and knowing the UX, but it's also knowing the industry of like where to allow self-serve. So if they want to go and check what feedback they've received over the past 2 weeks, that they should just be able to do on an app instantly, accepting offers, they should be ringing the agent. So it's just knowing where and how to do it, really.
We actually had an interesting, well, it's not really a milestone, but I'll call it a milestone. A couple of weeks ago, we got an email in from a potential vendor or soon-to-be vendor saying, I've used Street before as an applicant and I want to choose an agent that's on the street. Can you recommend an agent in my area?
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, we had no street agents.
Yeah, we didn't.
So
That's a hell of a sales call for you.
So we're now recruiting in which postcode?
Yeah, I've got a lead for you if you just buy our street software. I'd have been salivating at that. That's interesting, isn't it? Where it almost, not that you push that side of things per se as street being a consumer brand itself, it's still about pushing the agent. But that fact where people actually are understanding the sort of the increased customer service so that they're actually valuing it. That, as you said, it's a real milestone, that, isn't it?
Yeah, no, we all got very excited about it in the office. Not that we could do anything with it, but we did get excited.
You know what's really sort of different from an agent's point of view? When you deal with suppliers over the years and the software might not quite be where you want it to be, or you might have an idea that will benefit your end user, which is always going to be the client. And you'll feed that back to the supplier. The suppliers will say, yeah. And then they'll just pay you a bit of lip service, shove it into development, and they'll say, yes, that's on our to-do list of doing it. Now, the other day I got a phone call from an agent who was in two minds as to whether or not he was going ahead with you guys. And he said, look, is there one bit of feedback you can give? And I said, yeah, the bit of feedback was that my team, at least, when they were sort of testing things out, or they found that something wasn't where they wanted it to be, you guys actually listened. You didn't just sort of pay us lip service. You actually acted pretty quickly. And there's a lot of changes in your system, a lot of enhancements, a lot of improvements that have been made based purely on user feedback. And it's almost like you never stop. So the responsiveness of your teams is just fantastic. So you don't just say, yes, it's in development. You actually develop it pretty much almost on the spot. And on the strength of that, I think that sort of gives an agent a lot of confidence that they can rely on you going forward.
I think we should be able to develop quickly. We've built it from the ground up with modern tech, so in a way that you can build quickly. We've got, I think, possibly the biggest dev team in the industry. So if we were being slow, we were doing something wrong. So yeah, we need to keep that up as we grow and make sure that never slows down, which hopefully we're doing a good job of at the moment.
It's actually one of the key kind of tech metrics, which is cycle time. Excuse me, which is how long it takes from reporting an issue to actually it includes all the time it's sat in the backlog through to production. So it's something we monitor closely, because I won't dive into the whole tech babble of like theory of constraints, but essentially once you start getting more requests than you can handle, that queue, that backlog, that list of things we're getting to becomes infinitely long. And so, yeah, it's something we monitor really closely. We actually did it in 2 hours the other day. So an agent suggested a feature, and that feature was designed, built, and deployed to production in 2 hours.
That's what I said the other day, David, wasn't I? I said, this is all about the theory of constraints, I said to you. I remember quite clearly now.
Yes, that was, yeah, I remember.
By the way, I said I'd deal with all the technical questions, if you don't mind, from now on. David,
this is why I'm not allowed on these things.
It is. I've noticed. I mean, apart from we get this on a lot of our podcasts, I've noticed you look at your watch a few times for how much longer this is going to take. 48 hours before launch. Can I ask the $1 million question, or the elephant in the room, or whatever else is? One of the frustrations a lot of agents have with all tech, to be fair, here is that, you know, you'll see the very glitzy, glamorous marketing information, and you'll see things like, doesn't really matter what it is, data conversion, integration, but the degree, or, you know, you can get a tick in the box there quite quickly, but there's a whole then spectrum, isn't there, of actual capability there. So what some people, for example, will call integration, you know, is completely the other end of the spectrum compared to what the expectation may be of the agent has. Where does your tick in the box in terms of lettings end for the agent? Is it going to deliver the whole gamut of things? Are you doing it in stages, and this is more about the property management? What does lettings, you know, this big release on Wednesday that you can tell us about, don't do your normal a politician's answer here, say wait and see. What can you tell us? How comprehensive is the lettings release going to be?
I think by the fact it's taken us 2 years to build the letting side with not a small team, lettings is one of those things where you can't just go out with an MVP. You can't launch a bit at a time. There's not much point in having a maintenance solution if those invoices and contractors don't link up with anything else. So it runs counter to a lot of like modern developing theory of agile versus waterfall and stuff like that. You just have to build it all. So that is what I would say is we've taken that approach. So it is
comprehensive.
This is where we get
he's a proper developing geek, isn't he? He's
we've got an
agile waterfall
there. I could see Heather trying to push, she's hitting his legs saying, you're telling them too much. You're telling them too much. I mean, well, okay, that is really, and it makes perfect sense, of course. Yeah, it's difficult to do. So that's going to be, I mean, obviously this is going to be big news for the industry as well, but you haven't even had time to sit on your laurels from winning the Supplier of the Year then to really taking this up a notch.
No, it's been a busy few months, but it's been a busy couple of years, to be honest. We've not really stopped since the Street launch. So what I would say is we have had the property management part of Street in beta for 6 months now. So that is tried and tested and up and running. And so obviously we'll show all that on Wednesday, but it has been ready for a while.
Cool. And how do people get on board? I mean, if they're not that they could and should have missed any of yours, but is it 4:00 on Wednesday? Is it Wednesday?
4:00 on Wednesday. Yeah. If you head to street.co.uk, there's a tab for registering for the lettings launch, so you can sign up there, which has got instructions in terms of how to view it. Obviously, it's virtual, so you can watch it from anywhere. And yeah, we'll go through everything there, and then after that,
how webinars work, Heather. I think we know we can watch this from anywhere.
I'm saying that because one of our team said the other day, we've not said anywhere that it's a virtual event, and I was like, yeah, good point.
Yeah, you can have people knocking on the door of Spear Street in Manchester. Let us in. Well, you'd probably be able to actually, you're one of the few tech companies that would actually get people having that kind of Apple effect of queuing around the block.
That would be awesome.
Not on Spear Street.
Yeah, not on Spear Street.
Sorry, that's a real in-joke for people who aren't probably live around here, if you like your spice. But anyway, so
that's why we move so fast.
How do you move on from here? Is it just keeping because these are the big ones, aren't they? Getting these kind of structural things out of the way. What is it then? Just layering in more and more functionality, because of course you still, you mentioned here in 4 or 5 years with the iteration of the idea, but you're trying to catch up with packages in terms of functionality that, I mean, you mentioned the CFP there, Tom. Christ knows, what was that? That product's got to be getting on for 20 years plus old now and everything else, haven't you?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, once we launch, we know that there's going to be a challenge in onboarding people, data migration, onboarding, training, everything like that. So running alongside the lettings development, we've also been expanding Bridge, which is our kind of dedicated migration software. So we have a data science and data engineering team that work on Bridge to essentially allow you to migrate pretty seamlessly. So we did one in 24 hours the other day.
It's migration without the migraine.
But because that's the anxiety, isn't it? In lettings and management, when you talk about moving CRM systems, it's okay on the sales side of things. You might have a few photos to move across and a few notes, but if you leave copious notes, as a lot of property managers do, there's years and years of history over there that they're not going to want to leave, and they're going to get extremely upset when you suggest that we're going to do something new because they've always done it that way. But then if you also say, look, we're also going to try and take all that data across to the new system, it has to be pretty damn good, doesn't it? I mean, there's a lot of data to come across. Is it, in terms of development, is it that much more than you experienced on the sales side of things?
The migration is tough, I think, for a few reasons. One is a lot of the systems that people are moving from are legacy systems that were built 20, 30 years ago. And
when I started, Tom.
What's that?
When I started.
I presumed it was
just your way of really having a dig at sort of us dinosaurs of the industry that started off selling estate agency software rather than CRM.
I think, to be fair, like if any kind of schema, any database that doesn't get constantly updated, which wasn't really possible 20 years ago, we've got the ability. I mean, we update our system 40 times a day. So like continuous integration, like it's fully automated. But that wasn't an option 20, 30 years ago. So you couldn't very easily keep databases up to date. So it was almost inevitable. But essentially what we're trying to do is take quite messy, duplicated data and pipe it into a modern system with a central source of truth. That's difficult in and of itself, but also a lot of the existing CRMs don't export a lot of the data, and so there is like a fundamental limitation there. Like if they don't give you the data, there's nothing we can do. So even though we've built this dedicated tool, there's always going to be a little bit of friction, but the alternative is just to never move, I suppose.
I mean, obviously, when I was in my previous life, that was a real challenge. But you know, are there still CRM companies that are actively trying to block? You don't have to obviously name them, but are they actually trying to block the that difficult time when somebody says they're leaving? We're not giving you the data. They still seem to think that data is their own.
I don't think it's deliberate. No, I would suspect they've added a bit to the system and they've never built the export functionality. So they'll give you most of your data, but there's just no export for X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And from their point of view, I suppose, they'll have a backlog of things that it's on their list. And
why is that going to be a priority? Yeah.
Yeah, that's never going to be a priority. So yeah, as I say, like unless people have got APIs, which at the moment they don't, then there's not much option but to rely on their export functionality.
Just so I understand as well, because again, people have tried to explain this to me many times over the years. So what you're talking about there, when you're making so many different changes and everything else, it is because in the old days, wasn't it? Somebody would do a major upgrade every 6 months, 9 months, a year, or whatever else, if you were lucky there. And actually, agents wouldn't be looking forwards to it. They would go, "Oh God, it's an upgrade. What's going to break this time?" Is that? And I don't know if that's that whole agile thing you're talking about, the development kind of side of things. There is that because you're from a Luddite's point of view, if you're in there all the time doing it, there's less potential to kind of break things.
Yeah, essentially. So. Difficult not to kind of
talking to a simpleton, let's just say.
There's a very strong correlation, like an inverse correlation between deployment stress and the success of a company long term. So the higher the stress when you need to push software, the lower the success of the business over time. So there's a big argument to say just try and reduce that stress to the point where it's nothing, so that every time you make any change in the code, it goes live. And you build automated tests around it, and it's all completely automated in what's called like a continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline.
David loved that.
I've got to tell you, I'm just, you're talking and I'm thinking, are we seeing like a Tom staff sort of, like coffee table book anytime soon?
I feel like I've got
challenges for the
just
modern
as a reminder
man.
to any viewers, you can claim your CPD development points for the educational fireside chat with Tom. And I'm going to apply for one of those developer jobs now on the back of it, which Tom keeps rejecting me on. Okay, thank you. I mean, that does make sense, but again, it just seems. Where do you see that? I mean, obviously, there's been some it's kind of bad news in the industry, which was almost inevitable, wasn't it? Of this after this period of growth. Where do you see the prop tech scene at the moment, just out there in general? Are you kind of excited still by it? There's obviously new companies jumping up overnight. Where do you see the wider prop tech market at the moment?
I think we're in for us a really good prop tech market, because I think now with the market cooling down a little bit, agents need to be more efficient. And obviously technology is one way of doing that. So, rather than bums on seats to do tasks that could be automated, I think technology, automation, outsourcing, efficiencies, all of them are going to become so important over the next few years. And I also think, there's been a proliferation of prop tech companies springing up over the last 3, 4, 5 years where, they'll arrive, they'll say they've got the best solution ever, and they can sort of get away with it in the market that we've been in. But now I think you actually do need to deliver efficiencies for agents. You need to deliver value, and those prop tech companies that do that will survive, and those that don't will fall away. Yeah. So I think we'll see a lot more reliance on prop tech going forward now.
I think it's true, isn't it? A lot of agents over the last 2 years, because they have been so busy and probably, let's be honest, haven't really needed it to prosper. They've put some of those big prop tech decisions, like the CRM, like your website, like your email sort of nurture journeys, just on the back burner, haven't they? Because they haven't had a moment to rest. And now they're coming out. As long as they have got that rainy day fund, it needs to be invested properly to get that strategic advantage. Because there's no doubt, isn't there, somebody that gets a CRM working effectively in their business does have an actual strategic advantage over their competitor who's working, inefficiently in all these different areas.
Yeah, definitely. Excuse me, sorry. Yeah, I think in the market that we've been in, you can sort of hide inefficiencies because you've got the top line coming through. But going forward, if your competitor next door can do twice the amount with the same amount of people, ultimately over time, they're going to win because, it's a really interesting point because we often debate this in terms of how do we market Street? It's a CRM, it's a state agency software, is it a platform? And what appeals most to agents? And the truth is that Street, in terms of really, really high level, does two things. It massively increases margins because you can do far more with the same amount of people, but it also helps them win new instructions because it is a USP, or I was told recently not to call it a USP, a unique customer benefit, as in it's their benefit to their customers, which is true. We're running a webinar soon that help agents talk about the technology that they can offer on valuations, because we have agents who are, I think actually Normie and Co recently asked for it, in terms of some collateral around the client app. People love knowing that they can have an app, they can download it, they get push notifications, they can, do and see everything from the mobile phone. And that helps on a valuation or a market appraisal. So
I think if you've not sold a house for, I don't know, 15 years or 5 years, it doesn't really matter. If now is the time that you're choosing to sell a house, that experience, the customer experience, is so different. Hopefully, in terms of the level of service that the agents are providing, but it's also now backed by the tech, because previously we had really nice tech that worked for us in the office that only we could see. There wasn't those client login areas. There wasn't any sort of nice particular UI for them to interact with. But now they've got something that if they're on it and sort of anxious at 2 a.m. and they want to check the progress of their sale or check when their next viewings are or what the offers were, they can log in, they can do it, they can take a little bit of sort of ownership of their, and I think that's also really key, that the house selling process in general is one where you hand your life over to an estate agent and therefore you hope that they're going to do the best with it. If you can give the client a modicum of control, and allow them to actually feel like they're getting involved without getting in each other's way, I think there's massive benefits there across the board. And I think, you should be, if you're not going into that living room and saying, by the way, what makes us different is we do use a system like this, and this is what you can expect as a result of it, you're missing a massive trick.
Yeah, exactly. So we've been asked multiple times to pull some marketing collateral together so that agents can, badge that up as their own and leave it behind on a valuation or just even talk about it. So we are working on that in the moment because it is a big differentiator. So yeah, I think
the other thing though, Heather, isn't it, is you're not just being judged on what your competitor agents are doing, you're being compared by what other companies in the high street are doing and everything else. And if they're delivering these, the dashboards, login areas, apps on the phone and everything else there, again, property would just look like it was a little bit behind the curve if you weren't also be able to help service them in their needs 24/7 that people want these days.
Exactly. Consumer expectations these days are, they expect to be able to do things from the mobile, because you can in pretty much every other industry. You can book yourself a haircut, you can book yourself a meal, you can order a taxi, you can do anything from your mobile.
Describe my Saturday night there, Heather.
all not had a haircut for a while. But yeah, it comes to a estate agency and you're communicating with your agent in exactly the same way normally you would be. Sorry, we're getting some building work done, if you can hear that. Can you not? Okay. So you communicate on the whole exactly the same way you would do 15 years ago, which is phone calls and emails. And I remember when I was selling my house, you get quite excited about the process, and then your property goes live, and then you don't hear anything. So you're like, oh, what's happening? You know, has anybody requested a viewing? I've got no idea. So you end up chasing, and then that consumer experience falls down a little bit. Whereas if you can just offer them something where they can log in and check, even if you're not giving them anything you wouldn't normally, for them, it's just a better experience.
I was going to slag off David there and sort of say, well, look, obviously, you know, a lot of these tools now are, you know, have been, let's say, borrowed or inspired by the very people that they, you know, agents for the best part of 5 years couldn't stop critiquing the online agents, whether it's the PBs or everything else. It's almost like they had to go through that kind of phase where they, you know, they obviously they were the sole premise of the online agents. And then they have been, you know, every agent is genuinely becoming a hybrid agent because of this ability to deliver, haven't they? Tom, was that a factor when you were thinking about this lot of stuff? Did you look to what the online agents were doing, or was this all very much from within your own head?
We didn't look too much at the online agents. I did actually I don't know if you've ever had a valuation from Purple Bricks. Guy did a while ago when I was selling my house, and I was shocked because obviously their adverts and everything is all about fees, commisery, low fees, save yourself thousands. When you actually get the valuation, all they talk about is the technology, the transparency, the instant access, the app. So in that respect, I think they were coming at it from a similar angle. They knew that consumer experience was, especially digital consumer experience, was a way that you could really differentiate yourself. But no, we didn't look too closely, to be honest, at what the online agents were doing, because we wanted to do most of it from first principles.
Excellent. Okay, cool. So what else should we get? We could just to say as well, we're going to do a follow-up, obviously, because we knew that we'd be in that, much as Tom's been honest today. I'm not saying you haven't, Heather, by the way, but we're going to do a follow-up show as well, just to deal with some of the things that we've obviously seen at the launch and everything else, to give the people the opportunity to ask some questions that maybe that they have afterwards. But what else have you? What's 2023 look like for you guys?
Got a pretty big roadmap, to be honest, in terms of other features, other some big things up our sleeve that we're just scoping out now. So obviously we'll never stand still.
Sounds like you haven't got any ideas, and you're going to go.
The problem is, if I say it, people are going to be like, "Okay, when's that ready?" And you know what it's like, Simon. You don't want to over-promise and under-deliver. So
no, I've never had any problems with that, Heather.
The engineering team's overshot for the launch event, so they wanted to get certain things ready to be released on the launch event, and so they actually have 10 things ready, and we've literally only got time for 8 because we want to leave a decent chunk for letting. So there's 2, I think, absolutely unbelievable features that we didn't even have time to mention.
Well, you can definitely, obviously, update us on that. Then that's what I'm insisting. You've got to let those 2 save the good ones for after.
The truth is, if they do nothing else, Street will always be remembered for, you know, their legacy within this industry is top trumps. That is possibly the best thing I've seen. You know, I know I keep going on about it, but guys, forget the CRM game. It's card games you want to get into. It is
to pitch to this industry.
Kudos to our marketing team.
Yeah.
Great stuff. All right, guys. Well, look, thank you for taking the time out today. We are going to have a little surprise with you. We've got something to tell you, to announce to you as well on our follow-up show. So make sure you do tune in for that as well. We're going to do that one live, I think, as well, Heather, so you can take the tough questions.
Wow. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah. And I've just realised how clever that bridge thing is, because it bridge goes over a street, doesn't it? So I've been thinking about that.
Yeah, we've tried to keep the street puns to a minimum, but we're building. You might be able to hear the building work. We're building.
Is that just stop oil?
Yeah,
that's a good one. Who's just stop oil? Is that the other CRMs, or are there's these shadowy? You know, forget it. I'm as usual. I'm going too far with the analogy, aren't I? on a Monday.
I'm lost.
Yeah, I'm a bit lost. But
just smile.
How much of that cafeteria?
Smile and nod your head. It will soon be over.
Yeah, just stop oil.
Thanks.
First of all, fantastic. I was lucky enough to see a lot of the votes that were coming in for you. The comments were, I think, the most, was the most telling for me, is they really believe that, and this comes, I think, again from your background, doesn't it? This isn't people sat in an ivory tower. It's people that understand that the challenges of agents are wanting to make it. I think it was very telling, Tom, what you said earlier, is that you understand the value that good agents do deliver, and people have a choice, don't they, as tech companies? They come in and they say that actually we're going to want to work with you, we understand the value you do, or you guys are all stupid and tech's going to replace you. So it is, of course, refreshing that you choose the right option.
Yeah, well, the first tester for all our new stuff is our dad, and their agency is very good with feedback, shall we say. And if we get something wrong, he'll tell us. So yeah, most of the time we're building stuff and we're testing it initially with our own family. So
it would make Christmas dinner just so much more interesting, as if you just took him to the cleaners. But anyway. All right, guys. Well, obviously looking forwards to Wednesday. Mincy, have you got anything else you want to throw into the mix?
No, just keep up the good work. It is truly refreshing to deal with people that care about those efficiencies that they're delivering to agents. And I know Whaley said that we're trying to emulate sort of hybrid agents, but to be honest with you, we never had the tech to be able to compete with people like that, because they just weren't building it, and now we've got it. So all power to you guys.
Amazing, thanks.
Cheers.
And I hope you enjoy Wednesday.
Good. We'll look forward to the next catch up, and have a great week. I'm sure you will.
Cheers, you too.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Cheers.
See you soon.